Hi everyone, I am Coach Diana. I want to thank Coach Kelly, for allowing me to come and speak with you today. I hope you find this beneficial. My special topic is vegetables, and I'm excited to share with you all just some information that I think is helpful to understand about vegetables, and also how to incorporate vegetables into your Trim Healthy journey. I have been a Trim Healthy coach for about a year and a half. I have been on the Trim Healthy lifestyle plan since 2018. I think it would be great to start with why are vegetables so important? And some of this may be very obvious for you, but I think it is good to hear it, and it's a good reminder. So naturally, vegetables are loaded with various nutrients and vitamins like vitamin A and vitamin C, which are all excellent for a healthy diet. There's potassium, there's natural folate. There's so many good nutrients that vegetables hold. And they are also very low in calories. They're nutrient dense, but they're lower in calories, and typically higher in fiber, which is a second benefit. So having a higher fiber diet is not only really good for your digestion and your gut, but it helps fill you up and it helps keep you full in conjunction with the protein in your meal. So that is probably one of the biggest things about vegetables is that typically the fiber content is much higher than in other things that you're eating, and it really helps aid in your digestion and keeping you fuller longer, and promotes good gut functioning. Most vegetables are very water soluble. The more water, the better, like a cucumber. It is so good for, water is just so good for your skin, for your complexion, for helping you age gracefully. It helps with food moving through your body, that digestion process. Because there's such a high water content, that's another reason why they're so low in calories. Of course, being packed with these nutrients and vitamins certainly helps not only with weight loss, because you are eating and filling yourself up on lower calorie, but higher nutrient and density type food, like high fiber type food. So it does fill you up longer. It does fill you up quicker, and therefore allows you to eat a little bit less, therefore reducing your calorie intake, which helps you ultimately lose weight. It also reduces your risk of various diseases and heart issues, and certainly a diet infused with a variety of fruits and vegetables will give you an increased or a reduced risk, I should say, of experiencing health issues or any potential diseases that could come from a poor diet, maybe even cancers in some instances. So those are why vegetables are so important. I think, kind of out there, the recommended daily allowance is at least 5 servings of fruits and vegetables a day. I am sure I exceed that, depending on how big a salad of mine is, or even when I'm putting roasted veggies on my plate, there's a good chance I'm over a cup, at least, of vegetables. Some of the other things I wanted to mention about vegetables is, and how I mentioned earlier, they are really good for our gut. Well, I want to share, certain vegetables act as a prebiotic, helps feed your gut with nutrients that help grow and help the growth of healthy gut bacteria. It feeds that healthy gut bacteria. There's certain vegetables in particular that are excellent as a prebiotic to feed your healthy gut bacteria and promote an environment that is kind of pleasing for other good bugs to come and do their thing. I wanted to mention some of those important vegetables. So leeks, onions, mushrooms, artichokes, and garlic are probably some of the higher vegetables that act as a prebiotic and feeds the good bacteria in your gut. But also your green veggies or your green leafy vegetables. Asparagus are also really, really good prebiotics for your gut microbiome. Tomatoes also. And then I'll add in there too that some fruits are as well, like apples and bananas and berries and even legumes. So how do vegetables fit into our Trim Healthy lifestyle? They are huge in our Trim Healthy lifestyle. I will say that most meals, if not all, if possible, should have some form of vegetable in them. And I'm going to give you some tips at the end and suggestions on how I try to incorporate that for myself. But most meals, like I said, if not all, should be rounded out with a healthy portion of vegetables. I do have starchy and non-starchy vegetables, and that's where the type of vegetable comes into play depending on your fuel source. So we have our non-starchy vegetables, which in the Trim Healthy lifestyle, you are not restricted in the amount of non-starchy vegetables that you eat. You definitely want to be mindful of what you're cooking your vegetables in. Try to get people not to obsess about the quantity, but put enough vegetables on your plate that they're going to fill you up and that you're going to enjoy them. Also, we have our starchy vegetables, which, maybe like tomatoes or some people even say Brussels sprouts are a little bit more on the starchy side, kind of the vegetables that have a little bit more carbs in them. Those are good to maybe keep at a minimum, especially with your S meals, or, you could be a little bit more liberal with them in your E meals. So basically how I build my plate, as an example. So for an S meal, I always start with my protein first because I'm a little bit, as you've heard the sisters call it, a protein nerd. So my goal is usually to try and get anywhere from 110 to 120 grams of protein a day. So with my meals and even my snack, I am focusing on my protein source first. So whatever that is, whether it's a piece of steak or a piece of chicken, whatever it is, I'm focusing on that first. And then for an S meal, I will balance out my plate with various vegetables, whether it's a big side salad or roasted veggies. And again, sometimes I balance out my fats with doing a roasted veggie that turns out to be a fuel pull versus being roasted with butter or oils or anything like that. And really, I just use like a spray, either an avocado spray or an olive oil spray, and season it with maybe garlic salt or other seasonings of your choice, and roast it in the oven at 425 for 15-ish minutes until you like them done. And boom, you have a fuel pull veggie. So it's a nice way to balance things out, especially for older women who are, not counting calories, but definitely need to be aware of the heaviness and lightness of meals that they consume. So, and then for e-meals, again, very similarly, I start with whatever that protein is, and then add my non-starchy veggies. And then usually I reserve kind of a quarter of the plate, or I kind of go by what I've learned is an appropriate amount of carbohydrates, whether it's maybe a half a cup of rice or 3/4 of a cup of rice, 2 pieces of Ezekiel or sprouted bread, maybe like a little, like a quarter of a plate serving of potatoes, something along those lines. Quinoa, maybe a whole smaller sweet potato, but a half of a larger sweet potato. So that's kind of how I build my plate for Trim Healthy purposes, and where I incorporate those vegetables. And I'll say real quick, those fuel pull roasted veggies come in super handy when I am having an e-meal for sure. Some of the tips that I can give you to get more veggies into your diet. A lot of times I will have a shake in the morning. A shake is super easy to get your veggies in. I mean, it is the easiest foolproof method of getting veggies into your morning breakfast. In my house, we keep several veggies on hand in our freezer at all times, always, to be used for these specific things that I'm going to share. I always have a bag of kale, which I just buy the fresh bag of kale. I try to get the organic kale if possible, because the leafy greens like spinach and kale, they highly recommend, based on the Dirty Dozen, that you should get those as organic. So I usually try to get the organic kale, and I am usually shopping at Walmart because I don't have a lot of grocery options around me. And Walmart has everything I need. In my freezer are always a bag of kale that is now frozen, a tub of organic spinach that is, a lot of times I just literally just buy it and put it into the freezer. Sometimes I'll leave it out for a few days, so maybe I can use it in a sandwich or use it in a soup or in a casserole or saute it. But for the most part, whatever's left, I just stick the whole tub into the freezer. Another vegetable I always have in my freezer is cauliflower, whether it's in a rice form or whole. So I just buy it frozen at the store. Costco has a great bag of frozen cauliflower rice, where you can get 4 or 5 packets maybe in there. Always buy that when I go to Costco. And I always have a big bag of the frozen cauliflower florets. Always. And the final vegetable that I always have in my freezer is okra, of course. It's super good for your gut. So those are my veggies. When I do a lot of smoothies, those are my veggies on rotation for getting my vegetables into my breakfast. Kale or spinach, okra or cauliflower. If I have fresh zucchini or fresh squash in my refrigerator, I will also use those as an option for my smoothie. The thing that's important to note is, depending on the taste of your smoothie will kind of dictate what vegetable will work best. You can get away with pretty much any of those vegetables except okra and sometimes kale, because both of those vegetables have a little bit more of a bite. So you need to be careful. But if you have a smoothie that has a very strong flavor, maybe like a Secret Big Boy or the, what's the one? There's one in the Trim Healthy Future. It's the lemon poppy seed. You could usually get away with putting okra in those smoothies. The rest of them, spinach, cauliflower, zucchini, they really don't have a taste, and you could just use those interchangeably. Another thing I do if I'm not doing a smoothie, certainly it's very easy to saute up a veggie if you're having eggs. That's super easy. Probably most of you do that already. But another easy way is to shred or puree a vegetable and add it to things. Oatmeal or a quinoa bowl or any kind of breakfast that you don't want to taste the vegetable, but you can hide it in the flavors, are a perfect way for non-starchy vegetables. And I'd say probably most specifically zucchini and squash, and even cauliflower, cauli rice. Those in particular are great for those types of bowls. Maybe even putting some cauli rice in, an overnight oats. So everything gets kind of the flavor of the overnight oat flavor. So there's a lot of great ways that you can hide vegetables into things. Of course, for like other meals like lunch and dinner, I'm a huge advocate, if something doesn't call for a vegetable, figure out a way that I can puree it and add it as a vegetable. So as a soup, for example, it might not call for cauliflower or okra or something, or whatever, or zucchini, but I can puree it. I can, have it maybe chopped up very small, and it would still take on the flavor of the soup. And I'm adding extra veggies. The mushroom hack that had been popular in the Trim Healthy community for a while. I do mushrooms a lot. I add sauteed zucchini or zucchini chunks to a pasta sauce. When my kids were younger, they're all out of the house now, but when my kids were younger, I would just puree things into any of the sauces, like if it was pasta or maybe even mac and cheese that I made for them back in the day. I would figure out a way to get those veggies into that sauce so they can eat it. There's all sorts of ways to sneak it in. You just have to experiment. And I think that's the beauty about cooking and making meals, is experimenting with what works well and easy for you. None of these tips or tricks that I'm recommending take a lot of extra time out of your prep, out of your meal preparation. They're super easy to incorporate. If you're making a smoothie, stick a zucchini in there or squash, handful of this, a handful of that, and you're good to go. If you're making oatmeal, process some zucchini. Or another trick that I've used is I will pre-shred zucchini or squash, put them in a cupcake, silicone cupcake holder, and then let it freeze, and then put them in a baggie. So I have pre-portioned shredded zucchini and shredded squash. Just leave them in my freezer, and it's just so easy. I usually, maybe for a single serving of oatmeal, I might put 2 portions into my oatmeal, and you can't even taste it, especially if you have, maybe if you make your oatmeal like a banana flavor or a maple flavor, or you have your sweetener. Oh, that is a good point though, the sweetener. Sometimes with smoothies and things, if you are adding a vegetable, depending on the bitterness of the vegetable, like okra, for example, you might need to offset that with just a little bit extra sweetener. So that is something to keep in mind as you're experimenting with different vegetables to incorporate into your daily routine. And I will say, if there is a smoothie recipe in any of the books that I'm looking at, and I decide to make that smoothie, I am figuring out which vegetable will go well in there. I rarely, if ever, make a smoothie. I can't even think of a time that I haven't hidden a vegetable in there. And for the longest time, my husband had no idea. And now he's just like, oh, whatever, because he just gets them all the time. Okay, my final thing regarding veggies is, if you've bought vegetables, and this is for any vegetable, you have purchased it and don't think you're going to be able to use it, or it's kind of getting to the point that if you don't use it, you're going to need to throw it away, but you don't have anything you want to make or any ideas or suggestions, and you just don't know what to do with it, my suggestion is either leave it whole or slice it, depending on the vegetable, but then sticking it in a freezer bag and sticking it in your freezer to use at some future point in time. For example, even tomatoes. If you have like whole tomatoes or tomatoes that you're not going to use, probably the only ones I wouldn't do are maybe like a cherry tomato. But if you have big tomatoes that you're not going to use, stick them into a freezer bag. Cut the little stems out, stick them into a freezer bag, and boom, you can use them when you make sauce the next time. So that you could do that with tomatoes. Onions, celery, slice it. You can put it in a freezer baggie. I do that all the time, especially if the celery is one of those things I don't always use up quickly enough. So if I see celery that's ready to be used and I'm not ready to use it, I slice it up and put it in a freezer bag and stick it in the freezer. But zucchini, if I haven't used the zucchini, I either slice it up or I shred it, like I mentioned before, so I could put it in the cupcake holders and save it for oatmeal or smoothie or whatever. I even freeze cucumbers. Yes, I freeze cucumbers. And cucumbers are great for adding into your smoothie. Now, you do have to make sure, because cucumbers do have a very strong flavor, but even I buy mostly the mini cucumbers. But regardless of the size of the cucumber, I freeze it. If it's a really big cucumber, I'll chop it up and freeze it. You could use cucumbers for your under eyes. There's so many uses for cucumbers. My point is, you do not need to waste your veggies. Lettuce, I will try to lengthen the life of my lettuce by putting a paper towel on top of the lettuce in the bin to try to absorb some moisture. That helps me get a longer life out of my my prepackaged lettuce. I do 2 different things with my artisan romaine. I either wrap it in a paper towel and stick it back in the bag, or other trick is to wrap it in aluminum foil, and that keeps your lettuce hearts, your romaine hearts, to last longer as well. So honestly, if I have had lettuce that's starting to wilt, I'll stick it in the freezer, because you know what? The mixed greens, it's good stuff in there. Put it in the freezer and then use it in a smoothie. Hopefully you get the gist. If you're not going to use it, freeze it. It doesn't matter what it is. You can figure out a way to use it. I hope this has been helpful to you. If you have any questions, I'm sure you can ask Kelly and she can get you in touch with me. You can find me on TikTok and Instagram at Coach Diana V. And I wish you well on your Trim Healthy journey, and stay strong.